Now in this video, I'm going to explain how political scientists have changed in their understanding of public opinion. But I'm going to talk about the original view of public opinion. I'm going to talk about the revised view of public opinion. But I just want to tell you ahead of time that that's not going to be on the exam. I'm not going to ask you any essay questions on the original view or on the revised view. Now, that doesn't mean skip ahead, okay? God, I hope you didn't skip ahead already. What it means is that I'm not going to ask you questions on the exam about this, but I am going to introduce some terms that are important for you to know later on. So I do want you to watch this. I do want you to understand this, but I want you to understand the terminology that I'm going to be using, and I'll point out what I mean by that. So in the original view of public opinion, and this was before political scientists had the ability to gather large data sets, the understanding of how public opinion was formed was pretty basic. And the idea was that individuals learn about politics from their parents, from their school, maybe from their church groups or whatever. They learn about politics from people in their immediate life, and they form enduring attitudes, right? So people hear their parents talking over the dinner table or at family functions. Maybe they hear their friends talking as they get older, and they slowly start to form these enduring attitudes. Well, as you know, we can't see attitudes, but we can observe opinions. The idea is that once this process takes place, that individuals express stable opinions. Now, what do I mean by a stable opinion? The idea is that if somebody is asked the same question in successive surveys, if their opinion is stable, then they'll give the same response. So for example, if somebody's asked, do you think we should be spending more, less, or the same amount on education? If a person responds that we should be spending more, in the first survey that they're asked, that if a second survey comes around and there hasn't been any change in the amount that's being spent on education, they'll give the same response. They'll say more. Now, obviously, if there's an increase in spending on education, they may say this is the right amount we're spending. But the idea is if nothing is changing in the environment, and they said we should be spending more on education in one survey, then if they're asked again in another survey, they'll say more, and then in another survey, they say the same thing. That's the idea behind stable responses, that they are responses, opinions that are expressed that stay the same over time. And so that's how political scientists sort of understood the way public opinion works. But once we were able to start collecting large data sets, one of the things that came apparent is that this assumption that people had stable opinions wasn't borne out by the facts. In fact, many individuals don't express stable opinions. So political scientists sort of revise their way of thinking about it. If they're not expressing stable opinions, then they must not have these enduring attitudes. And as a response, as a result, this is why their opinions seem to go back and forth. In fact, one of the things that some political scientists noticed is that if you looked at overall responses to survey questions over time, the pattern of responses at times resembled what you would get if people were literally flipping a coin and answering their question, right? So if somebody said, should we spend more, the same, or less on education? And if someone were to literally flip a coin and depending on how it landed, give their response, that actual responses sort of looked like people were just flipping coins, that there was a lot of what they called response instability, that people didn't seem to have enduring attitudes. And as a result, most people didn't express stable opinions. Their responses instead were not stable. And this is what we refer to as response instability, which creates a problem. Because if you're a policymaker and you're trying to figure out how you should vote on a particular bill, if you think that public opinion polls are just reflecting what happens when people flip coins, right, that there's no real stable opinion among your constituents, well, how do you vote? Also, it didn't portray people in a very good light. Like people were just making stuff up as they were going along. They used to refer to these as doorstep opinions because back in the day, when public opinion polls were taken, people would literally walk to someone's door, knock on the door, and ask them questions. And the idea was that people were just making stuff up as they were going along. Do you think we should spend more or less on education? And people in their heads are flipping a coin and be like, more. Do you think we should spend more or less on defense? People are just flipping a coin, less, and just making it up as they were going along. And it wasn't a surprise that the next time they came back, if the coin landed on something different, they would say something different. Didn't portray people in a very good light. Well, the current view is not quite as, I don't know what the word is, doesn't reflect quite as poorly on citizens. The dominant view now is something that we call the memory-based information processing model. And I know that sounds complicated, a lot of words, big words, a hyphenated word, but it's actually not that complicated as long as you follow the argument step by step. And so let me explain the memory-based information processing model in the next video.